After I died, I discovered I was just a side character in a campus romance novel. The female lead deliberately targeted me, making everyone around me hate me. In the end, her followers pushed me under a car, and I died on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day before the female lead first targeted me.
Ding.
Positive energy system activated. Post can change plot points through positive actions. One good deed equals change one word in the original text. Good deed witnessed by 20 people equals change one sentence. Good deed becomes famous worldwide equals female leads. Protagonist halo will be stripped away. That night, I helped an elderly lady cross the street twice and earned the right to change a word. Original text: Emma suddenly fell to the ground. The next day, Emma suddenly fell and took light. Everyone was stunned. Nobody expected someone who gets breathless from walking fast could fly so high and so far through the air. Emma's athletic performance left everyone on the playground frozen in shock. Even the principal, who'd had back problems for years,
Couldn't help
but straightened his spine while following her flight path. When Emma finally landed in a faceplant position, the principal snapped back to reality and quickly. We called students to help, half suppressing laughter, half waving his hand. Quick, help Emma up. This was the plot point in my past life. After she deliberately fell, she blamed it on me. One was a good student who just transferred and won over a bunch of followers with her. The other was a nobody with average social connections. Everyone believed her story, including my childhood friend Jake and my arranged fiancé, Michael. After tasting success from framing me, Emma began repeatedly scheming against me. Gradually, everyone sided with her, seeing me as their enemy. Coming back to reality, complex emotions flooded my heart. I followed the crowd forward. As expected, the female lead falling from such height, she only scraped her lip area. Seeing me approach, she suddenly sobbed. It was Sarah who tripped me. As soon as she spoke, the onlookers exchanged glances. The principal couldn't help but speak up. Emma, I understand. Sometimes academic pressure makes you want to do performance art, but dragging others into it isn't necessary. Hearing this, Emma let out a shriek. It was her. She's behind this. But the wound on her upper lip, combined with her wild gestures, somehow hit someone's funny bone. After one snort of laughter, other students couldn't hold back either. Emma awkwardly burst into tears, while Jake and Michael rushed to comfort her. I took the chance to blend into the crowd. In my past life, I died the day before starting my new life. After my parents died in a car accident, I was adopted by the Johnson family due to my mother's friendship with Mrs. Johnson. They all treated me well, especially Michael, my arranged fiancé. We'd promised to marry after college graduation, but everything changed when Emma transferred here. Michael deliberately confessed to Emma at my birthday party. I love Emma. Sarah is just an orphan girl clinging to our family. Then Emma squeezed out some tears and responded emotionally. Michael, I'm not worth you doing this. No, you are worth it. The two embraced romantically like TV drama leads and walked away together, leaving me standing there awkwardly.
that day.
The video went viral online. As a joke, I became a laughingstock. But what happened next was even harder to accept. Emma seemed to have magic. Whatever she wanted, she got like Mr. and Mrs. Johnson support. Initially, they were very unhappy about the relationship, saying Michael had wronged me and would make it right. But gradually, they fell silent. Sarah, you understand feelings can't be forced. Besides, Emma is a good girl. As they say, forced melons aren't sweet, right? In just 6 months of Emma's presence, I went from sweetie to just Sarah. After stealing Michael, Emma still wasn't satisfied and actively approached my childhood friend, Jake. Jake also began turning against me for Emma's sake. Having lost family, lover, and friends, I felt heartbroken after graduation and prepared to leave this painful place. But on my way to the train station, I was suddenly pushed under the wheels of a car. You flirt. You're not even worthy of carrying Emma's shoes. That was my last memory, pulling myself from past life memories.
He sighed softly.
Seeing the darkening sky, I ran straight to the woods behind the school building, helping ants move house. Ants count as small animals, right? Helping small animals should count as a good deed. The system's cold mechanical voice seemed tinged with helplessness. Helping ants move does count as a good deed, but your left foot just accidentally crushed an ant. Positive and negative cancel out what? I jumped far away in shock. System detected another ant died under your right foot. Positive energy deducted. Punishment incoming. Remembering punishments from system novels I'd read, I shuddered. You're not going to electrocute me, are you? Of course not. We're a positive energy system. Punishment, deliver. Positive energy votes to the next person you meet. For 5 full minutes. Execute immediately. Reluctantly standing up, I began looking for my first target. I'll choose the principal. That shouldn't be too awkward. Sarah, you went too far this time. Just as I was planning, I looked up to see Jake storming over angrily. Do you know how hurt Emma is? She's such a fragile girl who needs protect. How could you deliberately trip her? I opened my mouth in frustration. Why couldn't you appear any other time? Why now? Jake frowned. What do you mean punishment begins? A healthy body brings vitality. A healthy mind preserves original intentions. Healthy thoughts achieve great things. Jake was shocked. Are you saying I'm sick? Say that again. When others give reminders, listen calmly and remember them. This keeps your mind clear and continuously moving toward goodness. I never found 5 minutes so difficult. I racked my brains for positive votes. Not doing anything avoids mistakes, but also prevents achievement. You're saying I can't achieve anything. Jake couldn't help but roar. Ignoring him, I continued speaking while helping a student pick up her dropped book. I turned and made way for a student carrying papers. Seeing our homeroom teacher rushing to the gate for a package, I thoughtfully reminded her it might rain, and not to forget her umbrella. After the series of actions, 5 minutes finally ended. I realized a crowd had gathered behind me.
Wow.
You can't judge by appearance. Sarah looks so cold, but she's actually so helpful. Her hands never stop the whole way.
Yeah.
And she's so eloquent. Did you see how she left Jake speechless? Great personality, too. She didn't even get angry when Emma falsely accused her. Hearing this, I quickly slipped into the classroom, ignoring Jake's dark expression. Congratulations. Post good deed witnessed by 20 people. Reward change. 1 sentence in original text. Exclamation point. Looks like I need to show my positive energy in crowded places. From now on, Jake and Michael used to be in my class, but transferred to Emma's class last month. This made me very grateful. With 9 months until graduation, time was tight. I didn't want to return to class and have to outweed them. My classmates obviously treasured every minute too. After enjoying some gossip, they focused on their studies for the next week. I finally lived a normal life while continuing my good deeds. Just as I'd saved up 2 system rewards, the recovered Emma appeared again. Sarah, could you come out for a moment? I didn't move from my spot. Emma's eyes flashed with obvious resentment, quickly suppressed by tears. Last time, I was confused from the fall and mistook you for someone else. I'm here to apologize today. Sarah won't still be mad about this little misunderstanding.
Will she?
A crystal tear rolled down her pale cheek. Such a small thing. Sarah won't really take it to heart. Will she? Emma didn't mean it. Hearing the murmurs around me, Emma secretly smirked and began rummaging in her bag. This is an apology gift I specially brought you in my past life. After the false accusation incident, Emma also came to me pretending to apologize. I angrily knocked away her gift, falling right into her trap, and making everyone lose their last bit of sympathy for me. This time I won't do something so stupid. System present, original text. Emma pulled out a cake from her bag and handed it to Sarah. I'm changing it because of my silence. The entire class and hallway focused on us too. Everyone watched as Emma shyly pulled out a pile of dog poop from her bag. Dozens of students stood in neat rows, their eyes darting between me and Emma. In my past life, Emma had handed me a beautifully wrapped, expensive imported strawberry cream cake. When I, consumed by anger and humiliation from her previous lies, violently knocked it out of her hand, the cake had splattered across the floor. Michael and Jake had immediately stepped forward, shielding Emma as if she were a fragile flower trampled by a monster. The onlookers had whispered, labeling me as petty, aggressive, and ungrateful. But now, the script had been rewritten. The system's cold, mechanical voice echoed in my head. Text modification successful. Initiating reality correction. Emma's hands were still deep inside her designer tote bag. Her face maintained that delicate, tear-stained expression of a victim seeking peace. This is an apology gift I specially brought you, she whispered softly, her shoulders trembling slightly to elicit maximum sympathy from the crowd. Then, her slender, manicured fingers wrapped around something. Her expression didn't change. The protagonist halo forced her to maintain her gentle, pathetic smile, but as her hand emerged from the bag, the collective breath of the hallway hitched. It wasn't a cake. It was a large, moist, unmistakable pile of fresh dog poop. Emma held it aloft with both hands, presenting it toward me with the reverence of a high priestess offering a sacred relic. Her eyes were wide, glittering with unshed tears. I hope you can accept this, Sarah. I really want us to be friends again. A dead silence fell over the corridor. The student closest to Emma took a slow step backward, her nose wrinkling in immediate disgust. The smell, sharp and pungent, began to drift through the drafty hallway. What is that? Someone whispered from the back. Is Emma presenting Sarah with actual feces? Emma's brain seemed to temporarily short-circuit. The plot required her to deliver her apology lines, but her physical body was currently holding a biological hazard. She looked down at her hands. The smile on her face froze, turning into a bizarre, twitching mask of horror. Ah! Emma let out a strangled gasp, her eyes bulging. She tried to throw it away, but because the original text stated she handed it to Sarah, her body physically leaned forward, thrusting the handful of waste directly toward my face.
Take it. Please take it.
She shrieked, her voice cracking with a mixture of terror and confusion. I didn't step back. Instead, I stood my ground, my expression morphing from shock to deep, sorrowful concern. Emma, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent hallway. I knew the academic pressure of transferring here was high, but I didn't realize it had affected you this deeply. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a pack of wet wipes and a small plastic trash bag I always carried for cleaning up after stray dogs in the park. Without a hint of disgust, I carefully opened the trash bag and held it out. Quick, put it in here. It's okay. We all have rough days. I don't blame you for whatever this is.
Ding.
System notification, act of genuine empathy and public sanitation detected. Witnessed by 42 people. Reward, 1 sentence change in the original text. Emma's hands trembled violently. The physical force of the rewritten plot finally released its grip. She dropped the waste into the bag I held out, her face turning an ash-gray color. She looked down at her hands, covered in residue, and then up at the surrounding classmates who were now covering their mouths, staring at her with a mixture of pity, disgust, and profound confusion. I didn't. Emma stammered, her voice trembling. This isn't what I brought. I brought a cake. I swear I brought a cake. We all saw it, Emma. A classmate from the drama club said, her voice dripping with secondhand embarrassment. You literally pulled it out of your Chanel bag. Why would you even have that in there?
No.
Someone set me up. Sarah, it was you. Emma pointed a soiled finger at me, her tears now completely real, born of sheer humiliation. Before I could answer, Michael and Jake pushed through the crowd. They had heard the commotion from their classroom next door. What's going on here? Michael demanded, his brow furrowed as he glared at me. Sarah, did you do something to Emma again? Michael. Emma wailed, throwing herself toward him. Michael, seeing his beloved angel in distress, instinctively reached out to catch her. But as she drew closer, the overwhelming odor hit him like a physical blow. His eyes watered, and his feet stepped backward of their own accord. Emma, what is that on your hands? Jake asked, holding his shirt collar over his nose, his face turning pale. She tried to give me a present, I said quietly, tying the trash bag with a neat knot. I think Emma might be experiencing extreme psychological stress. She should probably go to the infirmary, or perhaps a hand-washing station. The onlookers murmured in agreement. Yeah, Sarah was actually super nice about it. She didn't even get mad. If someone offered me that, I'd have thrown it back at them. Sarah's a saint. Is Emma actually crazy? Jake and Michael stood frozen. They wanted to defend Emma, but the physical reality of the situation and the smell made it impossible to maintain their usual romantic, protective stance. I'll help her to the restroom, Jake said reluctantly, holding Emma by the very tip of her clean sleeve, pulling her away as she sobbed hysterically. Michael stayed behind for a moment, his eyes lingering on me. There was a strange, confused look in his gaze, a crack in the perfect brainwashing the protagonist, Halo, usually exerted. Sarah, did you really not do anything? I only offered her a wipe, Michael, I said softly, looking at him with clear, calm eyes. I hope she feels better soon. I turned and walked back into my classroom, leaving Michael standing in the hallway, looking utterly bewildered. In the evening, I sat at my desk in the small, quiet bedroom of the Johnson estate. Since my parents' deaths, this room had been my sanctuary. But over the last 6 months, as Emma's influence grew, the servants had stopped cleaning it regularly, and the heater was often accidentally left broken. In my past life, I had cried myself to sleep here, wondering why the family that once swore to protect me had turned so cold. Now I only felt a calm, analytical focus. System, I called out in my mind. Show me the status. A semi-transparent blue screen floated in front of my eyes. Positive energy system. Host Sarah. Active mission. Accumulate 10 sentence changes to unlock, paragraph modification, or achieve one globally renowned good deed to permanently strip the female lead's halo. So, the system operates on the conservation of narrative mass, I mused. The original novel is a low-effort, melodramatic campus romance. The logic of the world adapts to whatever changes I make, even if they're absurd, like Emma flying through the air or carrying dog poop. The world simply rationalizes it as performance art or mental breakdown to keep the story moving. Correct, the system's mechanical voice replied. The world's consciousness will always attempt to patch the narrative. However, the more bizarre the patches become, the more the supporting characters' trust in the female lead will erode. Their brainwash is maintained by the narrative consistency of her innocence. When her actions become indefensible, the halo weakens. This was my leverage. Emma wasn't just a girl, she was a force of nature protected by the author's bias. To defeat her, I didn't need to fight her directly. I just needed to make her narrative so ridiculous that the world's logic could no longer support her. The next day, the atmosphere at school had shifted. Emma had taken a day off, claiming a sudden fever. But everyone knew she was hiding from the shame of the apology incident. During lunch, I went to the school cafeteria. Instead of sitting alone in the corner as I usually did, I looked for opportunities to accumulate points. "Excuse me," I said, approaching the cafeteria lady, Mrs. Gable, who was struggling to carry a heavy crate of fresh apples. "Let me help you with that." "Oh, thank you, dear, but it's quite heavy." Before she could finish, I took one side of the crate. Thanks to my daily jogging and the light physical conditioning the system provided as a baseline safety feature, I lifted it easily.
Ding.
Helping school staff. Witnessed by 12 people. Accumulating positive energy. After lunch, I walked by the science building and noticed a group of first-year students struggling to clean the high windows. I immediately took the squeegee from them. "Let me do the high spots. You guys handle the lower parts so you don't slip off the chairs."
Ding.
Assisting underclassmen. Witnessed by 18 people. By the end of the week, my continuous stream of small, quiet good deeds had begun to accumulate. I wasn't doing them for show. I genuinely tried to be useful, but doing them in populated areas was a strategic necessity. The students' perception of me was shifting. I was no longer the gloomy, clingy orphan Emma had painted me to be. I was the quiet, incredibly reliable girl who always seemed to appear whenever someone needed an extra hand. On Friday afternoon, as I was leaving the library, I ran into Michael. He was waiting by the oak tree near the gate. When he saw me, he stood up, his expression complicated. "Sarah," he called out. I stopped, maintaining a polite, neutral distance. "Yes, Michael? My parents want you to come to dinner tonight," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. They noticed you haven't been eating with us lately. And Mom wants to talk to you about the upcoming Autumn Gala." The Autumn Gala. In my past life, this was the event where my social ruin was finalized. Emma had wore a beautiful, custom-made blue gown that Mrs. Johnson had originally promised to buy for me. When I showed up in a plain, off-the-rack dress, Emma had accidentally spilled red wine all over herself, then claimed I had pushed her out of jealousy. Michael had publicly denounced me, and Mrs. Johnson had looked at me with deep disappointment, sighing that I had grown up to be so bitter. "I see," I said, my voice calm. "I will be there." "Sarah," Michael hesitated, looking at me with a frown. "About Emma, she's really sick. She's been crying in her room for days. She says someone must have played a prank on her by putting that stuff in her bag. You don't really think she did it on purpose, do you?" "I don't think anything, Michael," I said, offering him a small, polite smile. "I hope she recovers soon. The gala is next week, and I'm sure she wants to look her best." Michael stared at me, seemingly frustrated by my lack of anger. In the past, any mention of Emma would make me fly into a defensive rage, which only made him dislike me more. Now, my complete indifference was like throwing a punch into thin air. "Right," he muttered. "See you at dinner." The dining room of the Johnson Villa was grand, lit by a crystal chandelier that cast a warm, golden glow over the long mahogany table. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson sat at the ends, while Michael and I sat on opposite sides. The atmosphere was stiff. "Sarah," Mrs. Johnson began, her voice gentle but carrying a trace of distance that hadn't been there 6 months ago. "I heard from Michael that you've been very busy at school lately. You're barely home for dinner." "Yes, Aunt Elena," I replied, using the familiar term I had used since childhood. "I've been volunteering and focusing on my studies. Graduation is only 9 months away, and I want to ensure my grades are sufficient for a scholarship." Mrs. Johnson paused, her fork hovering. "A scholarship? But the Johnson family has already agreed to fund your university tuition. There's no need for you to worry about such things." "I appreciate your generosity, Aunt Elena," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "But I believe one should earn their own way. Besides, with Michael and Emma being so close, I want to make sure I am fully independent so as not to cause any complications for the family's public image." Mr. Johnson looked up, his sharp eyes narrowing. "What complications?" "Nothing, Dad," Michael said quickly, his face flushing. "It's just that at school, everyone knows Michael and Emma are very close," I said, my tone completely innocent. "Since Michael and I have an old family arrangement, I don't want people to think Michael is breaking his promise or that Emma is stepping between us. If I show that I am independent and focusing on my own future, it clears up any misunderstandings." The table went silent. In the past, I had hid my pain, allowing them to slowly push me aside without ever bringing the truth to the table. By bringing it up so casually and politely, I laid the awkward truth bare. Mrs. Johnson's expression tightened. She looked at Michael, then at me. Sarah, you know we value you, but feelings cannot be forced. I completely agree, I said, smiling warmly. That's why I am entirely supportive of Michael finding his own happiness. I only wish he had told me directly before declaring his love for Emma at my birthday party. But water under the bridge, right? Mr. Johnson slammed his fork down, his face dark. Michael, is this true? You did that at her birthday party. Dad, Michael stammered, his face pale. Emma was being bullied. I had to protect her. Bullying? I asked, tilted my head. You mean when she fell and took flight across the playground? Or when she tried to apologize to me with a handful of, well, I'm sure Michael told you about that incident. Mrs. Johnson's eyes widened. What incident? Nothing, Michael practically yelled, his chair scraping loudly against the floor as he stood up. I'm done eating. Sarah, you've changed. You've become incredibly manipulative. I am only telling the truth, Michael, I said softly, my voice filled with a perfect, gentle sadness. If the truth sounds manipulative to you, perhaps you should reflect on why that is.
Ding.
Maintaining dignity and speaking truth to power. Witnessed by 4 people and 3 kitchen staff listening at the door. Points accumulated. Michael stormed out of the dining room. Mr. Johnson rubbed his temples, looking exhausted, while Mrs. Johnson looked at me with a sudden, unsettling sense of guilt. The protagonist Halo's brainwashing was strong, but it wasn't completely immune to facts presented with absolute composure. The days flew by, and the night of the autumn gala arrived. The school's grand hall was decorated in deep blues and golds. Ice sculptures melted slowly in the corners, and a live string quartet played soft, classical melodies. I arrived alone, wearing a simple, dark green velvet dress. It wasn't expensive, but it fit me perfectly, accentuating my quiet, elegant demeanor. As I walked in, I noticed Emma immediately. She had fully recovered from her illness. She wore a stunning, custom-made light blue gown covered in tiny, glittering crystals. She looked like a fairy princess, surrounded by Michael, Jake, and a group of her loyal followers. When she saw me enter, her eyes narrowed. The humiliation of the dog poop incident still burned in her mind, and I could see the sheer malice radiating from her behind her sweet smile. Sarah, Emma called out, stepping forward. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were cold. You look so simple tonight. I wish you had told me you didn't have a dress. I could have lent you one of my old ones. Thank you, Emma, but I prefer to wear things that belong to me, I replied, my voice calm and clear. The students around us began to whisper. Is she trying to start something again? After the last time, I wouldn't trust anything Emma says. But look at her dress. It's so beautiful. She really does look like a female lead. Emma smirked slightly, hearing the compliments. She leaned in closer to me, her voice dropping to a whisper that only I could hear. You think you're clever, Sarah? You think a few lucky tricks will change anything? Tonight, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of thief you are. She stepped back, her face instantly morphing into an expression of shock and distress. Sarah, how could you say that? She gasped, her voice loud enough to attract the attention of the nearby crowd. Here we go, I thought, calling up the system interface in my mind. System, pull up the original text for this scene. A screen appeared. Original text. Emma looked at her ruined dress in tears. Sarah, I know you wanted this dress, but how could you pour red wine all over me? Michael stepped forward, raising his hand to slap Sarah, but was stopped by Jake. She's not worth your hands, Michael, Jake said coldly. Sarah stood in the center of the hall, covered in wine stains and scorn, completely ruined. I looked at my available points. I had accumulated 4 sentence changes and 5 word changes. System, I whispered in my mind. I want to change the sentence. Emma looked at her ruined dress in tears. Sarah, I know you wanted this dress, but how could you pour red wine all over me? To something else. What would you like to change it to? The system asked. I smiled inwardly. Change it to. Emma suddenly grabbed a bottle of hot sauce from the buffet, poured it over her own head, and danced the tango while singing the national anthem. Processing modification. Warning. This change requires 2 sentence changes and 1 word change. Do you wish to proceed? Proceed.
Ding.
Text modified successfully. Initiating reality correction. In the real world, Emma was currently holding a glass of red wine, preparing to trip over her own feet and splash it all over her dress, while blaming me. Suddenly, her eyes went wide. The glass of wine slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Without warning, Emma turned around, her body moving with a strange, jerky urgency. She sprinted toward the catering table at the side of the hall. Emma? Michael called out, confused. Where are you going? Emma didn't answer. Her face was a mask of absolute terror, but her hands were moving with terrifying precision. She swept aside the elegant chocolate fondue, grabbed a large, industrial-sized bottle of extra spicy Sriracha hot sauce from the taco bar, and flipped it upside down. With a look of pure, unadulterated horror on her face, she squeezed the bottle hard.
Splat.
Bright red, spicy chili sauce rained down on her pristine, light blue crystal gown, dripping down her face, soaking her perfectly styled hair. "Oh my God," a girl screamed. But Emma wasn't done. The plot modification was absolute. She took a sharp, dramatic step forward, her left arm snapping into the air, her right hand resting on her hip. She began to slide across the polished wooden floor of the grand hall. "Oh, say, can you see?" Emma sang, her voice a strained, terrified operatic screech. By the dawn's early light, she spun, her red sauce-covered dress flaring out, splattering several nearby students. She grabbed a bewildered Jake by the waist, forced him into a dramatic tango dip, and then whipped him back up, all while maintaining her patriotic, spicy hot sauce performance. "What so proudly we hailed," she bellowed, her eyes watering from the chilly fumes entering her eyes. The entire hall fell into a state of stunned, paralyzed silence. The school principal, who was raising a glass of champagne to his lips, froze. The string quartet stopped playing, their bows hovering over their violins. Is this another one of her performance arts?" a student whispered, terrified. "She's singing the national anthem covered in Sriracha," another replied, awestruck. "This is incredibly avant-garde." Michael stood frozen, his mouth open so wide a fly could have flown in. He looked at Emma, who was now doing a series of dramatic, fiery tango steps toward the center stage, her face bright red and covered in chili seeds. "Emma?" Michael whispered, his voice trembling. He felt a profound sense of cognitive dissonance. This was his pure, elegant angel. Why was she currently smelling like a garlic chili paste and belt-singing about the broad stripes and bright stars? When Emma finally hit the final note of the anthem, she dropped to one knee, her hands raised in a grand finale. The hall remained completely silent for 3 full seconds. Then I began to clap. "What a powerful statement on global warming and national identity," I said, my voice filled with deep appreciation. "Bravo, Emma. Truly inspiring." A few confused students, swept up in my reaction, began to clap as well. Soon, a smattering of polite, incredibly confused applause rippled through the hall. Emma looked at her ruined dress, her burning eyes, and the red sauce dripping from her nose. With a loud, heartbroken wail, she turned and fled the hall, leaving a trail of red Sriracha footprints behind her.
Ding.
High-impact dramatic performance witnessed by 150 people. Logic patch applied. The school recognizes Emma's artistic expression, though highly concerned about her mental stability. Reward: 3 sentence changes. The Sriracha tango incident was the breaking point for Emma's social standing. No matter how much her protagonist Halo tried to make people love her, the sheer absurdity of her actions was too much for the human brain to process. Rumors began to circulate that Emma had severe behavioral issues, perhaps brought on by the stress of trying to maintain her top student image. Michael and Jake's behavior toward her also began to change. They no longer looked at her with unconditional adoration. Instead, whenever she approached, their eyes flicked nervously to her hands, as if expecting her to suddenly pull out another biological weapon or a bottle of condiments. On Monday, as I was studying in the library, Jake walked in. He looked tired, the dark circles under his eyes showing his lack of sleep. He sat down across from me, his hands clasped tightly. "Sarah," he said softly, "I didn't look up from my textbook. If you're here to accuse me of putting hot sauce in Emma's hands, Jake, I suggest you look at the security footage. She did that entirely to herself." "I know," Jake said, his voice cracking. "I saw the footage. She just grabbed it and did it. The doctors say she might be sleepwalking or having some kind of psychological episode. But Sarah, I want to talk about us." I raised my eyes, my gaze cool and analytical. "Us? There is no us, Jake. You made your choice 6 months ago when you told me I wasn't worthy of carrying Emma's shoes." Jake winced, his face flushing with shame. I don't know why I said that. It was like I wasn't in my own mind. Since Emma arrived, everything has felt so hazy. But lately, my head has been clearing up. I remember how we used to be. We were childhood friends, Sarah. We promised we'd always have each other's backs. You had my back, and then you stabbed it to make Emma smile, I said, my voice devoid of anger, which made it hit even harder. The childhood friend I knew died 6 months ago. The person sitting in front of me is just a stranger who stands by a girl who dances with hot sauce. Jake closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. "Sarah, please, is there no way to fix this?" "Live your own life, Jake. and let me live mine.
Ding.
Emotional liberation achieved. The target, Jake, has partially broken free from the protagonist halo. Reward: 1 sentence change. I looked at the system screen. I now had 6 sentence changes and 4 word changes. I was close. I just needed one major, globally recognized event to completely strip Emma of her halo and free myself, and everyone else, from the ridiculous constraints of this novel. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Every year, our school hosted the International Youth Innovation and Science Summit. It was a prestigious, globally broadcast event where students from all over the world presented solutions to global issues. The winner would receive a full scholarship to any Ivy League university and a massive grant to implement their project. In my past life, Emma had stolen my research paper on low-cost, solar-powered water purification for rural communities. She had presented it as her own, winning the global prize and securing her place as a world-renowned young prodigy. When I tried to speak up, Michael and the Johnsons had suppressed my voice, claiming I was trying to ruin Emma's future out of spite. My research notes were burned, and I was labeled a plagiarist. This time, I was prepared. I had spent the last 3 months perfecting the purification device, making it even more efficient, portable, and cheap to produce. I had also filed a patent under my own name through a small legal firm I hired using the money I earned from online tutoring. The day of the summit arrived. The school gym had been transformed into a massive exhibition center. Dozens of high-tech booths were set up, and television crews from international networks were broadcasting live. Emma's booth was directly across from mine. She looked pale but determined, her eyes flashing with a desperate light. She knew this was her last chance to regain her status. "Sarah," she whispered as the judges began their rounds. "You think you can beat me? I have the Johnson family's backing. Even if your project is good, the media will only care about me." "We'll see, Emma," I said, adjusting the solar panel on my prototype. The lead judge, a world-renowned environmental scientist named Dr. Vance, approached Emma's booth first. The cameras followed him, broadcasting the interaction to millions of viewers worldwide. "Miss Emma," Dr. Vance said, looking at her display, "please present your project." Emma smiled, her confident, charming demeanor returning. "Hello, respected judges. My project is a revolutionary solar-powered water filtration system designed to bring clean drinking water to millions." She began her presentation, using the exact words from my original research. I smiled, pulling up the system screen. "System, pull up the original text for Emma's presentation." Original text. Emma presented her brilliant design with absolute confidence. The judges were deeply impressed by her intelligence and compassion, declaring her a genius. Sarah could only watch from her booth, her eyes filled with tears of helplessness as her hard work was stolen before her eyes. I looked at my points. I had more than enough. System, modify the sentence. Emma presented her brilliant design with absolute confidence. The judges were deeply impressed by her intelligence and compassion. 2. Emma presented her brilliant design, but when asked to demonstrate the core mechanism, she insisted on eating the entire prototype piece by piece while declaring herself the queen of the sea. Processing modification. This requires 3 sentence changes. Proceed. Proceed.
Ding.
Text modified successfully. Initiating global-scale reality correction. Emma was in the middle of her speech. "And by using this specific alloy, we can ensure the filter lasts for 10 years without." She suddenly stopped. Her hands began to tremble. Her eyes filled with a look of sheer, unmitigated horror as her body, operating under the absolute law of the modified text, reached out and grabbed the glass tube of her prototype filtration device. "Emma?" Michael, who was standing in the VIP section, frowned. Emma didn't answer. With a terrifyingly determined expression, she brought the glass tube to her mouth and bit down. Crunch. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the microphone she was wearing, broadcasting to millions of viewers worldwide. "Oh my God," Dr. Vance gasped, jumping back. "She's eating the glass." Emma's face was pale, tears streaming down her face as she chewed the breakable plastic and glass components of her filter, swallowing them with a loud, painful gulp. She then grabbed the solar panel, ripping the wires out with her teeth, chewing on the silicone plates like they were potato chips. "Stop her. Someone stop her," the teachers screamed. But Emma, possessed by the narrative force, stood on top of her display table, her dress torn, her mouth covered in gray filter dust. She threw her arms wide and bellowed at the television cameras. "I am the queen of the sea. All your water belongs to me. Taste the power of my ocean." She then began to stuff a handful of activated charcoal filter powder into her mouth, coughing up a dark cloud of black dust. The international broadcast went wild. The live chat of the streaming platform was moving so fast it was a blur of question marks and laughing emojis. "Is this a live-streamed breakdown? The Queen of the Sea is eating her own invention. What school is this? Are their students okay?" The security guards rushed forward, tackling a screaming, charcoal-covered Emma off the table. Michael and Mrs. Johnson, who were watching from the front row, looked as if their souls had left their bodies. The protagonist halo was shattering. The sheer, global absurdity of this event was something no narrative logic could patch. Dr. Vance, pale and visibly shaken, turned away from Emma's ruined booth. His eyes fell on me, standing quietly and calmly next to my intact, perfectly functioning prototype. "You," Dr. Vance stammered, adjusting his glasses. "Young lady, please tell me your project does not involve eating glass." "No, Dr. Vance," I said, offering a warm, professional smile. "My project involves clean, scientific engineering. Let me demonstrate how it actually works." I poured a bucket of muddy, contaminated water into the top of my device. Within 10 seconds, crystal clear, purified water began to drip into the glass below. I took the glass and drank it without hesitation. "Perfectly safe, highly efficient, and costs less than $5 to produce," I said. The judges stared at the device, then at me. Dr. Vance's eyes lit up with genuine admiration. "Incredible. Simple, elegant, and highly practical. This is a true work of genius." The cameras focused on me, my calm, dignified face contrasting sharply with the chaotic scene of Emma being wheeled out on a stretcher in the background.
Ding.
System notification. Globally renowned good deed achieved. The female lead's protagonist halo has been permanently stripped. The world's consciousness is resetting to a logical state. The brainwash effect on all characters has been completely dissolved. The aftermath of the summit was swift and decisive. With the protagonist halo gone, the world's logical faculties returned. The Johnsons, Michael, and the school board suddenly realized the sheer depth of Emma's bizarre behavior and her systematic attempts to frame me. An investigation into Emma's academic records revealed she had plagiarized multiple essays and exams. She was promptly expelled from the school and admitted to a psychiatric facility for severe delusionary behavior. The Johnson family tried to make amends. One evening, Mrs. Johnson came to my room, her eyes red from crying. She held a velvet box containing a beautiful diamond necklace. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know what came over us. We treated you so coldly. Michael was so foolish. We want to make it up to you. Please, let us buy you the dress for the graduation ceremony. Let us be a family again." I looked at her, then at the glittering necklace. "Thank you, Annalena," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "But as you once said, force melons are not sweet. The warmth you had for me died 6 months ago. I appreciate your adoption and the shelter you provided, but I have already accepted a full scholarship to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I will be leaving for Boston next week." Mrs. Johnson gasped, covering her mouth. "Boston? But your home is here." "My home was with my parents," I said softly. "And now, my home is my future." I packed my bags that night, leaving the keys to the room on the desk. When I walked out of the gates of the Johnson estate, the morning sun was rising, casting a warm, golden light over the path ahead. Michael was standing by the gate, looking at me with a mixture of intense regret and longing. "Sarah, can we at least stay in touch?" I didn't stop. I simply walked past him, my steps light and confident. "System," I called out in my mind. "I am here, host," the system's voice replied, no longer sounding like a cold machine, but rather like a quiet, supportive friend. "Are there any more text edits to make?" "No, host. The novel has ended. You are no longer a side character in someone else's story. You are the author of your own life." I smiled, breathing in the fresh, cool morning air. Ahead of me lay a world of endless possibilities, built not on cheap tricks or rewritten lines, but on my own strength, my own choices, and a future I had truly earned.